the man go through. Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. Move up and let the man go. Let the man go. Move up and let the man go. Let the man go. Move up and let the man go. Let the man go. Move up and let the man go. Let the man go.
Well, Austin, I'd like to thank you for allowing us into your homes for this 11th episode of Season 5 of Esoteric Science Roundtable. I would like to start by making one brief announcement, or thanks rather, for everyone that came out to the metaphysical philosophical meetings that we host every third Wednesday of the month at Spider House. We had a good turnout, probably about 20 people there, about something like that, and I was very appreciative of everyone that came out and broke bread and shared and exchanged with us, and we encourage folks to remember that event every third Wednesday of the month, Spider House, and a lot of interesting information gets exchanged, and so again, we do appreciate everyone that comes out to embrace that opportunity and like I said, break bread with us. So I would like to thank my guest, Ikipr, for coming on the show today, and we're going to get into some discussions of quantum chaos. And if we could first start by getting into, jumping right in basically, this is tied into what is considered a magical revival topic, in that there have been many phases of magic, so-called, that have cropped up throughout the centuries, throughout time immemorial, and this more recent magical revival that we're referring to, this more classical magical revival, really started taking place, let's say around the late 1800s, about maybe 1870, sometime in there, and has proceeded since then and has evolved since then, and it continues to evolve. So we're going to get into some of that, so some of the history, and then see if we can pull it forward and talk about where this is heading into the future as well. So Ikipr, if you please, wouldn't mind. Let's get into some of the originators of this concept, or would you want to maybe define some ideas first, or you want to get into some of the?
Let's go ahead and define how it came out of the previous revival, cool. Which was sort of characterized, let's say, kind of by the Golden Dawn sort of persona,
okay. Right?
Where it's very traditional, very ritualistic, habitual forms of magic, where essentially you're working to achieve a preset ritual that's been utilized and kind of has some energy built around it in the collective consciousness. So you can kind of tap into that through ritual, but chaos magic kind of attempts to take it in a direction more so where it's more accessible, because it's more custom and more tailor-made to each individual who utilizes it. And so it's really open source magic for the people, as opposed to, if you were a member of the Golden Dawn during that magical period, you would have had to have bought all the magical weapons, the robe for your grade, and memorized all the signs, and yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's kind of cumbersome in this day and age to have all those accoutrements to make things happen. And so things have been stripped down a lot, and things have been simplified, and a more psychological aspect has really cropped up and come into being based around these magic ideas. And so that's another aspect that we'll be delving into as well. This idea of chaos, quantum chaos, certainly the newer ideas in science would be the quantum ideas that speak of multidimensionality, a nonlinear duality, and multiplicity of our being, and then in conjunction to that, the chaos aspect, in that seemingly in manifestation there seems to be a lot of chaos and a lot of disconnect, but in actuality, if we were to step back, it's kind of like those crazy pictures that if you look at them up close, they're all squiggly and distorted and they don't make any sense, but if you look at them a certain way, you squint just right, you can see a picture evolve. And I think that's a pretty apt description of the chaos that is really part of our creation, is part of our existence, in that there really is purpose behind all manifestation. And I would say quickly, one last thing, even with the computer-based chaos programs that I've seen, they ultimately resolve into patterns, is my understanding.
Yeah, and they're also based off of the time function, which is real interesting because they input the millisecond into the random algebraic expression, and through that algorithm generate the number that makes the random, seed, and so that kind of points to like each second, it's a different random variable that's kind of reflective of the incarnation of the singularity, if you will, in that moment, from moment to moment. Each second's going to give you a different random output, and it's a great channel for synchronicity to be programmed through. And chaos magic utilizes that a lot.
That's a good point. Even within this chaos, we do find points or nodes that we can find an alignment in, and that's a very good point as well. There seems to be order in everything at all levels, even though, again, things seem to be kind of chaotic in manifestation. Some of the people that originated this, did you care to get into some of these earlier guys and touch base on some of these earlier chaos guys and things of that nature?
Yeah, sure. Let's just first finish about how they were able to do this because of the previous magical revival.
Good point.
Had mapped out so well relative to science how this worked. So these early ideas about quantum physics and things like that start to come into play. There's a big energetic field theory that kind of implies quantum entanglement. Rigardi did a great job of mapping all that out in Tree of Life. Mm-hmm. And Tree of Life is almost like a fundamental basis that you could utilize to build a chaos magic system for yourself if you liked. But yeah, sure, let's get into some of those other guys as well.
Okay, we did mention, we're going to mention, I should say, rather, Austin Osman Spare.
Yeah, really interesting character. His works can be kind of hard to read at times, but he engaged in a lot of experimental magic. And that's kind of the key towards moving towards chaos magic, as we see it in the 70s, is like revising what we understood about magic and developing new means to tap into that. And Austin Osman Spare did things with automatic drawing that are pretty interesting. He has a large collection of artwork out there. It's definitely very interesting.
You actually have some photographs in this book, but they're a little provocative, so we're not going to be showing them on the
Certainly,
program.
yeah, some of his art did lean towards that direction, and that might comment on the unconscious mind. But anyways, my favorite theory from Austin Osman Spare actually doesn't come from him, but from his, in the later part of his life, his autobiographer, Kenneth Grant, who, talks about the third book of magic that Austin Osman Spare was working on in the magical revival here, where he talks about obtaining astral sigils and firing them off through a sort of astral tantra that would more so imply a synthesis of two auras as opposed to something provocative like his drawings, I guess you might say. So, I guess we can move on to Kenneth Grant from there.
Actually, let's finish a few things with Austin Osman Spare, and that the idea of incorporating into art magic and incorporating into the frequency, because when we look at a picture or we look at any object, it holds a frequency that we can identify and recognize, and so it makes an impact on us unconsciously and consciously in some cases as well. And so by imprinting and including in your art, automatic or otherwise, these magic sigils and these signifiers and signs and imagery that does hit us at the unconscious level, this is a way again of invoking or energizing or enacting these forces that are sometimes latent.
Yeah, this is really important to me too in my work as a musician trying to make hyper sigils. Like some of Austin Osman Spare's art is kind of he has art that's supposedly dimensional doorways to realities he's created within his art. He's also got art that supposedly contains multiple entities interacting with one another. If you view the art for too long, and they start to come to life and interact and talk and hold conversations. And actually, another chaos magician owns that, a more modern chaos magician, Genesis P. Orridge, who's also a musician and what was heading up Temple of Psychic Youth, and they're sort of proto-cyber magicians, if we want to get into classifying it. But they use art in this way too. And one thing I want to touch on before that is you talked about images being frequencies there,
Sure.
and you can actually convert images to frequency via radionics, and that's interesting. So then you can utilize something that both Genesis P-Orridge and William Burroughs liked, splintering things and making kind of a quantum synthesis of multiple things, and you can hide images and sound, and so that's kind of neat.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but as far as art and frequency and generating an altered state relative to frequency within people is an art that's becoming more refined now as we understand more and more about dimensions and the way that there's separate bandwidths of frequency that are merely separate by, tonality. And we also learn more and more about what actually triggers certain things within the human physical form, within the external form. Low frequency experiments like HARP, can definitely affect weather and things of that nature. It also falls in the range of the human metabolic frequency below 40 hertz. And with waveforms, we can actually generate different brain wave states through entrancement and things like that. And generally, esoterics has also had endless arrays of correspondences that can all be taken back to frequency as well. And so that's kind of where you get into making ritual art, is you're trying to hit the right frequencies for what you're attempting to invoke, for whatever purpose, whether it's microcosmic, macrocosmic, yeah.
All right, very cool. Let's see. Okay, so there's also more modern guys as well, and the guy's name escapes me that's doing the modern renditions, the paintings. He's going to be in the conference coming up pretty soon in Portland.
Oh, Paul Laffoley.
Yeah, can we touch on him a little bit? Because he's doing a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, Paul Laffoley is really interesting. His pictures are definitely like diagrams of dimensional reality and how he proposes that it is opposed to like an OTO planar sort of theory where you stack two-dimensional reality in 3 dimensions. He gives you more of a like how it's actually shaped in other dimensions. He also painted all 11 Sephira, and the paintings go together. And in that, he proposes that the Qiploth are placed in Doth. And I guess we'll probably touch on that later when we get towards Doth. So.
Yeah, but again, just another example of a modern artist. And unfortunately, we don't have examples of his art to show, but they're really, really intricate and very detailed. And they do have more of a 3-dimensional, and they look they look computer generated, but they're drawn with acrylic paints. And that's really just
stick-on letters.
Excuse me, just the effect that he was able to achieve is really pretty incredible in and of itself. Okay, so
definitely magically charged.
Yes, very much so. Yes, exactly. He definitely puts a little whammy on you when you check it out for too long. But okay, so there are, I guess, other examples of magic sigils and affixing sigils.
Let's talk about various ways to make hyper sigils.
Okay, sure.
You can make I make a lot of hyper sigils in audio. Like each track is a hyper sigil, and what I do is I identify those key frequencies that I need for, like, let's say a planetary energy. If I'm working within a stellar magic system, identify tempos, things of that nature, and then write based around that, and then incorporate randomness and chaos. And that's a good way to charge something, kind of allow that divine interfacing region where things aren't set and rigid, based on your whims per se. And that's very Taoist too, and that's important in all this as well. But as far as making hyper sigils, there's an endless amount of methods available. Phil Hine and Modern Chaos Magicians suggest methodology for Austin Osman Spare's concept of a language of desires, where you can make, basic sigils out of just phrases that are your will and intent, and fire those off however you please. And I guess firing off your sigil is kind of where, you tailor it to your needs. good methods that I find are sending things out through radionics. Radionics isn't used in the chaos community as much as I wish it were, because it's a direct technology-based interface into quantum entanglement and hitting up wave-particle duality. The waveform and the particle before it's a material particle by emitting your will through the waveform by sending out the resonance of the image, like we were talking about earlier. You can make hypersigils a lot of ways. Yeah. One thing we like to do is encode hexadecimal phrases and put them places. And then everyone's saying our hexadecimal sigils and not realizing what they're charging. Yeah, so just people experiencing your sigil other than you is a charge in and of itself.
Right.
It's about getting the energy into what you're trying to build there via a magical formula. And you can do that through any endless amount of means.
Right.
So yeah, can't really get too specific about methodology, but you can employ anything that's practical to you. And it'll work. People use the pop magic. You were talking about that earlier.
Right.
And actually build archetypes based around pop media. And if you make it specific to your purpose, that works out real well. Another chaos magician, Phil Hine, offers a better alternative to that, I think. Because in my mind, I'm not really, all that huge on pop media per se, but I think, like, who would I like to invoke? Who would I like to be like? Well, I'd like to be like some of these magicians that I liked, like Israel Regardie.
Right.
He was a great archivist. So what I do is, since I, envy that brilliance in archiving so much, whenever I can't find something in my library, I invoke Israel Regardie to help me go find what I'm looking for. And it works out pretty well. Pop magic wise, the Fonzie fixes our TV with a simple hit and an A. So, yeah. And that's, pop magic's kind of cliche in that way. I mean, it's always going to be worth a laugh.
And that's another thing I had spoken to you about previously, is that you're concerned personally about the purity of perhaps a pop symbol that you're going to fix a sigil on, because it already has its own energy that it's impregnated with, and for you to try to add a sigil to that, you may be delving into something that you can't really understand the repercussions that are going to perhaps come from that. So you want to try to use a clean symbol rather, as opposed to maybe a possibly tainted symbol that's tainted with, whatever.
Yeah, and that's a good argument against archetypes in general, too, because a lot of times, they are collective archetypes, and we don't know all the energy invested around them. I mean, some people like to go invoke those Goetic daemons, and, that's not my cup of tea for sure. Yeah. But, I mean, the same could be utilized. You could have a Quillapothic pop archetype pretty easily. They're out there, yeah. And the same thing goes with splintering, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this before. What do you really want to quantumly invoke into your art?
Exactly.
What's worthy of that? I mean, if you make a breakcore remix of a country western song that mashes up some rap or something with it, seriously, are you crafting anything good energetically there?
Yeah, that's a good point, because that's specifically what we discussed, was using, like the rappers like to do, pulling old samples from old vinyl in particular and reapplying that. And, is that a wise thing to do? Well, certainly it's very, very, common to do that, and it's very pervasive that, most rap is based on a loop stolen from somewhere or another in most cases. So, what are they building on in that respect? And it's good to know, the intent you're putting into something, to know as much as you possibly can about those energies and those forces, and that way you can hope to add, the most beneficial input that you can and gain the most out of it as well in addition to that. So
it's a big key to ritual art right there, is making sure you get the right energy into it. Because if it were a traditional Western ritual,
right,
you would want to have it crafted exclusively to the energy that, like, if it were to invoke Luna, you would only want lunar-based imagery. You know, in the ritual, you would want it to correspond to the color. Probably want to burn some incense corresponding to Luna. And if you're going to infuse that energy into something external, and that's what's great about art, is it is external. You're putting that energy back out there. You want to be careful what you craft there. You really do. Because you can just end up with aborted energy, essentially. And rituals fall by the wayside that way, and have.
And so essentially it's putting together a good recipe. And just like with cooking, if you put together a funky recipe, it's going to taste funky, or it won't be nutritious for you, or whatever.
Yeah, it's certainly, and you want to put love into your cooking too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Put a little oven in the oven, absolutely. So then, I guess things that are very impregnated and very old, like something like the Lord's Prayer, for instance, you know, obviously that has been impregnated from time immemorial for thousands of years by people, and so, you know, again, it has that quality of that energy, you know, so we just have to keep in mind that things that have been used over and over again, and that's why, again, getting back to pop icons and things that are that we know well through you know, our pop culture, you know, these things, again, they're so familiar to us, so we just have to watch what we're putting in the mix. And so I guess you mentioned earlier about you're adding your own blend or flavor of this new take on things, and there are also other people around the country that are experimenting in other aspects of that. Do we want to jump into that and touch on some of those guys?
Yeah, certainly. I guess let me explain just a little bit more about how I'm trying to craft it there.
Sure, please.
Into, you know, it's the music that I'm creating is my ritual. It's my chaos magic, tailor-made to me, but trying to have both microcosmic and macrocosmic aspects. It's once again exploiting, you know, the duality. The microcosm is the macrocosm, the reflectivity principle in place there. And yeah, really trying to capitalize upon that. And I guess a lot of other people are taking it in endless amounts of other directions. And some are sticking with the ritual format. Some people are going a more passive Taoist route. And I personally find that's a good way to go about it. It avoids habit. And a habit doesn't put you in the state of mind for magic to happen.
Ritual and habit, I guess, they can be synonymous, but they can also be, you know,
it can be a beneficial habit too.
Right, but it can be also negative as well.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
But when you introduce the chaos element, like I was saying earlier, you allot the room for, you know, the divine synchronicity to come in and interface and program it according to its will, not just yours. And that's key as well. Who do we want to talk about?
Well, actually, I just want to touch one last little point on that. Is with the more of the Taoist kind of mentality, the law of allowing, or just letting go and letting these things happen, letting the synchronicities happen, because you can't really plan for synchronicities to align themselves in your experience. You know, then that's really not under the full definition of synchronicity. And so there has to be that letting go and that allowing to a certain degree, even when there's purposeful construction of a sigil, for instance, or anything that you're building for some reason. You know, anything under construction, you know, we have to consider in those terms. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Allowing things to happen, allowing for flexibility, you know, I mean, certainly pattern ritual is important, but allowing for, again, the synchronicities and some flexibility to come into play, I think is important as well, because that's how things grow. That's how we expand the boundaries by, you know, testing and trying a little differently here and there, I think. And I think that's how this magical revival has kept going and growing, in that some, you know, new people came by and they said, hey, let's try a little of this. Okay, well, let's add a little of this. And then it became, you know, a whole new way of looking at it, and then the psychological ramifications of that as well, certainly.
When there were too many rules in place, it wasn't as fun. Yeah, but you can kind of artificially program synchronicities to fall in line, and a sort of domino effect. Phil Hine makes a real good point in one of his books, A Modern Chaos Magician, about setting up a domino-like effect, where you have one successful ritual feed into the next and then the next.
Mm-hmm.
But another good thing that I really like about chaos magic, or at least I hope is a current that, you know, is present within most people's chaos magic, is that the system of grade initiation has been taken out in favor of life experience, and synchronicity will initiate you as it sees fit. And that's important. That's the letting go aspect right there.
Yeah, I think I'm more in favor of that type of thing as well. I mean, as far as, you know, getting some grade or earning some initiation, you know, I think some of those things can fall into disrepute or it can be kind of questionable under certain circumstances. So definitely, I think if you eliminate that factor, and also there's, you know, obviously there's kind of competition and things of that nature that can creep into that kind of a graded system as well. You know, and like, oh, what level are you on? Oh, what level are you on? Kind of thing, you know. And I think that can be, you know, more convoluted and more of a distraction in some cases as well. So it's something to consider, and I do appreciate that as well.
And it's better to just see everyone as a potential ipsissimus.
I like that. I like that quite a bit, actually. Yeah, so trying to definitely, and so potential is definitely something that we want to, you know, get more bang for your buck with all these. Delving into this, you know, just for research and certainly for application purposes as well. So, what is the next thing you want to maybe try to touch on?
I don't know. Were we going to talk about any certain modern groups, or did we have anyone else from back in the day we needed to talk
Kenneth
about?
McKenzie, perhaps?
No.
We're not going to touch on it. Kenneth Grant, obviously, is somebody that we mentioned because he kind of took over the reins in a certain respect from some of these guys and knew some of these latter-day magicians personally, and so
they're interchangeable.
Magician, musician, oftentimes they are, no doubt. So and he had, you know, practical experience, you know, and knew some of these people, and so I think it's interesting. You know, you find all kinds of exposés on magic and magical information, and you know, different varying opinions on it. But I think it's good to get, you know, from the horse's mouth as much as possible from people that worked with these people and had more insight into, you know, what they were all involved in and stuff. And so yeah, it's good to look at that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. As far as Kenneth Grant goes, yeah, there is a little bit more I'd like to say, because his taking the OTO in the direction of the Typhon or Typhoidian sect definitely is a move towards chaos magic. It's kind of a move towards left-handed path chaos magic, though. And it gets really interesting because he intertwines it with extraterrestrial elements, as I've said before. And that in and of itself could fuel conspiracy theorists forever. I'm still waiting for my copy of Night Side of Eden if anyone's got one to sell me. Yeah. Or make a PDF, yeah. But yeah, I mean, definitely one more notch towards chaos magic, and that was actually, you know, kind of a reformed aspect of the OTO, and also ties into the Lamb workings that Crowley did as well, with the supposed gray alien sort of looking entity. And in a lot of ways, that kind of is Crowley's legacy to the modern century, is that now extraterrestrials and magic are interwoven, whereas before it was extra-dimensional archetypes that were assigned some rank in a hierarchy, like an Enochian, angels, archangels, got the Servian angels and the Carib angels, or they are the Servian angels, god names and so forth, but yeah.
Well, also, you know, it's interesting as well that you mentioned that with the extraterrestrial component, because so much occult literature does mention and emphasize, for instance, like the star Sirius as a very important aspect of our evolution on this planet, and the Pleiades. And I covered this a couple of weeks ago briefly, and you know, it also factors in. And so these far, you know, these bodies, these celestial bodies, way out in the far expanses of space, are still aligned and tied to us at some level. And so that, I think that does tie in as far as that application, or I mean, these other stars being incorporated at some level with the imagery, the symbolism, and then also the potential for extraterrestrial contact, interaction, you know, at some level as well. Because these stars, like I said, like Sirius, for instance, in the Pleiades, wouldn't have so much occult significance if that wasn't the case, and then we wouldn't be hearing these reports of Pleiadian contactees or Syrians or Arcturians rather, interacting with our species here. And so I think it's only, proper that it should be considered in the context of this information at some level, you know what I mean? Because we're certainly not alone in this vast expanse of space out there. To think that I think is a little, conceited, I guess, to think that we're the only ones out there. And so, yeah, I think I think it's part of this expanding idea of magic and this expanding psychological component of it that we would have to, at some point, factor in some of our neighbors and some of these entities that may intercede with us at some level.
Yeah, it seems like an integral part of Tim Leary's notion of intelligence squared. That would only come into play at some point. I mean, obviously we're making attempts in that direction with things like SETI, but
I'm not a big fan of SETI, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not impressed.
No, but definitely, and then back to multidimensionality as well, as far as consciousness and perception and, frequency and form and all those things as well, certainly.
Certainly other dimensions are inhabited, if this one is. If
Right.
you make that argument for, other planets, you should accept it for other dimensions
I think
as
you would
well.
have to, you'd really have to factor that in. And certainly we remember as above, so below, the Hermetic axiom, and I think that does hold true in every significant instance, in any instance actually, in manifestation. We see the duality, we see, there are two dual components to everything in manifestation. And so again, there's more psychological aspects to this as well. Let's see.
That's a good lead into Enochian.
Okay, sure. Let's go
What
for
I'd
it.
like to talk about with Enochian is essentially I guess he could be considered a chaos magician because he kind of improv'd in the Enochian system a bit, but Benjamin Rowe did a lot of work with chaos magic, and I guess he was on the forefront of the cyberpunk edge too, because he was out there in the 80s making text documents of his screens and stuff. And towards the end of all his work with Enochian, he started to get through a concept that our 11-dimensional universe was like a bubble, and that the Enochian entities were pan-dimensional beyond that. Like in their universe, there's a lot of 11-dimensional bubbles, and they're actually created by two, what we can't even describe, whatever it be, colliding and forming one of those 11-dimensional bubbles. And that Enochian entities are caretakers on that level. And that would sort of be in line with a lot of what the interpretation of Enochian is to a large degree these days. And so it kind of gets put off on the extraterrestrial tip like that, but really it seems like something beyond extra-dimensional. And also in that, that kind of indicates that Enochian is a great place for us to introduce novelty into our 11-dimensional paradigm through. If we can work with Enochian, we can draw in elements beyond the singularity that is our universe. And yeah, that's something to an exponential degree right there, certainly.
Well, I mean, certainly we can only perceive what our limited human consciousness can perceive at any point anyway. But then getting back to the Enochian, as far as identifying these energies of these entities, or however you want to describe them, certainly, that's been delved into for some time now, that this Enochian, I mean, how long has that been? Since John Dee and Edward Kelly.
But you didn't see it used again until Golden Dawn came around, really. I mean, it's hard to find magicians predating Golden Dawn using Enochian, and a lot of people
I think it's true, yeah.
kind of have beef with the way Enochian was redone in the Golden Dawn. They scree the individual squares most of the time, as opposed to like attempting to invoke a senior or an entity in that manner. And that seems to be the more traditional manner as well. But Benjamin Rowe gives alternate methodology as well. So.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious as to how we ascertain, by using these divination methods or whatever methods that we have at our disposal to identify again, what it is or who it is, or, what we're interacting with or what we're working with at some level. So I think that's always been curious to me.
The multi-layered language is part of the key to that. It's like protocol stacks on top of one another, but those protocols are correspondences, if you will. So they're, getting a synthesis there, and then that energy is invested there. But on a linguistic aspect, it's completely random almost. It's not got the same letter frequency as any other language. It doesn't match, what we generally think of as a language, and so it's kind of got a nonlinear aspect to it. And it also, throws the senses into a, disarray, so to speak, and catches you all in a chaos state, and that's good for capitalizing upon for magical purposes. But Enochian in itself has this information embedded into it, and it's changing our linguistic perception of reality. Time-based, I went and did this, I'm doing this now, to an Enochian frequency is a mind shift in the linguistic state. And that in and of itself is part of a key towards moving to Enochian as a working system.
That's interesting, though, that if it's so foreign that perhaps that was just our way of our finite human minds being able to perceive and trying to interpret this that is so otherworldly, if it is so extra-dimensional, that it is so far removed from our frequency, that's probably the best that we could do is try to give some vague, some vague interpretation of these.
John Dee was skilled at abstraction. He made the monad out of all the planetary symbols. So, yeah, that kind of points in that direction as well.
Very interesting. All right, let's see. Next that we want to get into, what do you think?
Well, whatever, I could say a bit more about Enochian as
Sure,
a system, too, if you like.
Yeah.
All indications are kind of that it's a lunar system. So when I work with it, I approach it from a passive manner, screening passively,
right.
kind of integrating my Taoism into it. And, when you approach a pan-dimensional entity, you don't want to approach it in the way that, a Goetic magician would approach its, entity that it invoked through a sigil in a triangle or something like that, and go do my bidding. And,
right.
It's really more like a wow. What would you like to teach me? Sort of be very humble if you're going to choose to work with any entity, and the interaction, with an archetype, whether it is fictitious or real, definitely leaves you changed and traces of that archetype within you, and it's usually a very beneficial experience.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and especially, if we find ourselves putting ourselves forcefully in these positions, hopefully we are at least somewhat cognizant of what we're doing when we're trying to achieve these, these results. And again, it gets back to the whole idea of this being more and more psychological, and how really psychology has cropped up ultimately from magic working, and it's just, it's almost interchangeable in some respects. I mean, it's those that are familiar with Wilhelm Reich that know that he was a student of Freud, and that the orgone energy stuff that he was involved in, you could consider that magic in many respects if you weren't more versed in it. And so again, there's him being a pioneer psychologically, and also I would say being a magician as well in many respects.
Yeah. I'd like to see more of a synthesis of orgone and chaos magic, as well as radionics. Yeah,
because I see a lot of similarity there. And that's, let's go ahead and maybe touch base on, there's some other guys around the world, really, not just here in this country, but all over the place, other groups of people that are involved in other aspects, pushing the boundaries of this revival, or this even newer version of the revival that we're, in the 21st century experiencing now. And so, I guess maybe we could touch base briefly on the Cthulhu Kids and those that have taken. This is an interesting book that I have here called The Magical Revival by Kenneth Grant, and I don't have a way really to show this very easily, but there are these barbarous names of evocation that H.P. Lovecraft came up with or borrowed for his writings, and then Aleister Crowley has very similar titles for some of his entities, if you will, that he has worked with and evoked, I suppose. And so again, we see younger people, newer people, that are coming around this time around and taking this information and again trying to reapply it in some respect. And so again, we've got this Yog-Sothoth. Is that right?
Yog-Sothoth or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a practical invocation floating around online to invoke the Yog-Sothoth into reality. Phil Hine wrote a real good Cthulhu book, Pseudonomicon, He proposes that the Yog-Sothoth are like a barrier outside reality, kind of like the Ein Sof in the Kabbalah, and that it's like a multi-entity comprising that. That's an interesting idea. It's this is all kind of left-handed path-ish chaos magic, though. Same thing could be said for the Typhon set of the OTO, who we mentioned earlier. Definitely, once again, and when we say left-handed path magic, I guess what people would say is black magic, although a lot of people within, the magical community would say there's no such thing anymore. Like, they've rectified duality in their mind, so it makes it the case in reality. The best thing to do is walk the middle path. I know you know, so some people don't. But, as much jeers as, we give to the chaos magic, Cthulhu kids, man, they get a star for trying.
That's what I'm saying, exactly. You know what I mean?
That's a great idea. It really is.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that they're bringing this imagery back and reapplying it. I've always been a huge fan of the H.P. Lovecraft mythos.
Working with it on the astral plane. Yeah.
And then, like you were saying earlier, again, people that are doing different things with different aspects of technology, even doing circuit bending. You got to touch base on that a little bit?
Yeah, let's talk about circuit bending.
That's a great topic.
Yeah, let's talk about technology and cyber magic in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we were talking about earlier, putting random chaos into technology can make some really cool things. You got to program it a little bit, and that's kind of where, the magical aspect of putting your will into it goes. And then, in addition to that, it outputs a beautiful array of chaos from your settings that you put in there. And circuit bending capitalizes on this by actually taking, a circuit board that was meant to produce sounds like a kid's toy, and then rewiring it to have incorrect voltage running to capacitors or transistors, and you get all sorts of random chaos. It never sounds the same when you flip that one switch. You can do all sorts. You can make circuit boards that weren't supposed to work together, and make them alter each other's sound through the actual circuitry. So that's actual electrical resonance being changed, and that's something to say in and of itself. But now on a software end, when you set up a random algorithm there, you kind of have the advantage of an EMI field of the computer being there. And I guess this would be the case with circuit bending as well, to attempt to capitalize upon non-local quanta interfacing and synthesize your aura with the machine's aura or electromagnetic field, and attempt to transmit your meditative state to the machine, if you will, and affect the random chaos in that way to ensure magical success in it. So,
and it seems like we keep recurring back to that same theme of purpose behind chaos. There has to be, or I guess there has to be some will, some intent, some impetus point to just set forth, unleash the hounds, and let them do what they may, kind of thing. And so, yeah, we definitely put some intent, but we can't perceive of all the different variations and the synchronicities and things that may occur as a result of changing a few things on a circuit board.
It feels like a very well-crafted chaos, scripted out from the beginning, man. Yeah.
Well, I definitely have never gotten as much of a vibe of like a mad scientist lab as I have being over at your place, because it's just, that's the best way I can describe it. It's really intense. I mean, it's, the electronic component is very, very, very viable and very, pervasive throughout the place. But then, you pay homage to the old-timey guys, and you remember the elders, and I do appreciate that, because those are the guys that laid down the foundations for this stuff. And again, these guys and these former musicians of this golden age, this late 1800s time, they did a lot of work, and they laid a lot of groundwork, or they relayed the groundwork for us to just build more upon. And so I really, can't thank a lot of these early guys enough. And they were really more like the rock stars of their day, especially the Golden Dawn guys.
The unsung rock stars of their day, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So let's see.
Jack Parsons epitomizes that with his Babylon working. There's another chaos magician we haven't gotten to touch on yet, but he kind of had the world destructive magic thing going through Babylon working, and Jack Crowley's Moonchild. I remember you and Freeman were talking about Moonchild.
Yes, we were.
You sent him a little letter about Moonchild beforehand, too. It was way too lengthy, but we'll not get into all that here, luckily. Yeah, essentially Parsons stole Crowley's Moonchild formula to have the ritual child, and yeah, used Babylon working to scree on the astral plane for a Scarlet Woman who appeared to him in the form of Cameron Majori, and they had their planetary kid. I couldn't say it's a moon child because, like I was telling Freeman, it's you know, you invoke a Scarlet Woman that's corresponded to Bana, which is Saturn, end up with a Saturnine child in that case, most likely. And supposedly, according to the Illuminati 2 video, they radiated him in an atomic blast on the 33rd degree parallel, and there's your freakish mutant golem moon child. So, yeah, that one is terribly speculative, too. No one go quote that anymore. They also like to tie Parsons to extraterrestrials, too, you know.
Yes, I've definitely heard that. And yeah, JPL.
Babylon working was just a year before Roswell. And so a lot of times they suppose that he opened like one of those John Keel Mothman style portals where the Roswell aliens came through. Because of course Jack Parsons isn't going to go and seal his Quilpothic portal. So someone else should if they get a chance.
It got open. I don't know. I guess if it's still open, I'm not sure what to say about that. You know, if it's should be left alone or what the deal is, I don't know. You know, there's definitely chaos unleashed on this planet. It's just, you know. Yeah,
there's a lot of etheric garbage as is.
Yeah, no question about that. No question.
Before we get into those last 10 minutes, I want to talk about cyber magic. Those last
absolutely
10,
sure.
If we can.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Let's just wrap up whatever else we got going on here. Yeah, I guess the only thing to mention relative to you know, Jack Parsons is L. Ron Hubbard was his screeing buddy, and
founder of Scientology. Obviously, some know that, and science fiction writer.
About a mid-high level OTO rank. We couldn't determine what degree based on our recollection, but he was in the OTO. Post Crowley age as well, kind of when it fizzled out. Definitely broke off to do his own thing though. So.
Oh yeah, no question.
But L. Ron Hubbard's a magician.
Yeah, it's true. If you guys didn't know that, that's very true. That's very, very true. I guess.
He can be one, they can.
What's that?
If L. Ron Hubbard can be a magician, anyone can.
Well, I used to hear stories of him when he was out on Hollywood Boulevard with just a real simple display, way before, you know, they came into all the money and all the fame and bringing all the celebrities in and what have you. So yeah, he's definitely come a long way, as they say. Yeah, any comments on the tree? Doth?
Yeah. Let's talk about Doth, because that's kind of relative to the point that we just got to. Initially, I guess we were going to do a show about the Kabbalah, but this is more lighthearted and enjoyable, really.
I would have to say.
But I guess what we do want to touch on is Doth, and I guess why that's pertinent is because we were talking about you know, Crowley dying shortly after. You know, Parsons and Hubbard successfully completed the Moonchild formula. I guess more so Parsons and Majori completed the Moonchild formula. Right. But yeah, Crowley never was able to defeat Corazon within Doth. The shadow self that's mirrored in the semi-sephira, the hidden abyss on Doth that separates the supernal trinity where the singularity is, and the second element, and the third emanation, and then, you know, at one point, Doth was where Malkuth is now, and Malkuth is the material plane. It's our day-to-day senses, and at one point there were only 4 elements within the Kabbalah. The dissension from Malkuth all the way down the Tree of Life left all the other Sephira in place and set up, you know, our duality of the Pillar of Severity and Mercy, and essentially most of the Sephira that are corresponded to planets. And that was made in that point where the abyss was left in its place, and the shadow self of Corazon exists there. And why this is relative is because even though we're looking at chaos magic and new open paradigms for anyone to program any reality they want, there's no reason to throw out perfectly good working formula. And one of those things that we can't throw out is the generation of the experience of the abyss, because that is endlessly important in the reconciliation of duality, as we've talked about earlier, into the singularity. And that in and of itself is the alchemical transmutation that we're after, both on a microcosmic level and a macrocosmic level. And so what does it mean to defeat Corazon? It means to achieve a certain level of ego loss. And I guess it kind of speaks for itself, while Crowley wasn't quite able to,
Couldn't quite pull that off, huh?
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And so I guess we could also consider Doth in some respects, for some folks, is the very bridge or brink between sanity and insanity.
It's as far as some people go. Like you and I have talked about before, Doth is kind of indicating knowledge, whereas Kether, the singularity above that, is more wisdom, and that's more Gnostic, really, where you're actually knowing the Godhead as opposed to knowing about the Godhead. And so for those who never forsake their knowledge as their Godhead on their altar, they're not going to really have too much
And you know
success
who do
with
that?
Doth.
That's the academia. That is your university professor. That's your guy that's getting his funding. Your research grant guys and all that. In a lot of cases, they're so stuck in the existing set paradigm of knowledge and, oh, well, this is written, so it is. This is in a textbook.
And that's why we didn't talk about science much on this show
No.
either, because not quite clued in there per se.
But I definitely think that, and I'm sure you would agree, that magic, or science and magic, can be interchangeable, and seamless science as if magic.
Yeah, and that's a great lead into cyber magic right there as well. Essentially, yeah, not only is quantum physics giving us better maps, like now we have 11-dimensional physics as opposed to 10-dimensional string theory,
Right.
and so it actually meshes when you add the hidden Sephira of Doth into the Kabbalah. It's like, oh yeah, 11 Sephira, 11 dimensions of reality. It's
Right.
It gives us a better understanding through quantum physics, but we have better methodology and better tools because of technology.
True.
And technology and quantum physics also breed quantum technology, which is just, an area of skepticism essentially right now. I mean, radionics is a prime example, like I was saying earlier, of programming your will into the quantum entanglement at the level of the waveform before it's a particle by, broadcasting a sigil, broadcasting a plant that has a specific frequency on it to yourself, and then curing your deficiency for that through frequency, because it's all energetic. And
Right.
that's what, they realized in magic around the time of the Golden Dawn, is they came up with the comprehensive theory of magic is, interactive energy that's being programmed. And that really is born the chaos revolution in magic. And it's important to continue to use technology in this way.
That's a good point as well. It's interesting, the integration of technology with magic and how it's only assisted in, certainly, I mean, just as in the simple sense of, internet and things like that, getting information out to more people, and then allowing groups to exchange and interchange somewhat, and exchange ideas and let other people around know what you're getting involved in, and so they can take a little piece or add a little, borrow whatever from what you're doing. And you mentioned the radionics and the orgone being factored into this whole working, and perhaps that is going to be your niche as opposed to some of these other guys that are going to have maybe a slightly different take on it, and they're going to be adding their own thing, and then so again, more comprehensive, more adding to it, and then again, as technology allows us to quickly interact or interface or understand these other workings. Again, it's just a more rapid evolution of the whole thing, a more rapid psychological evolution based on these old ritualistic patterns, basically.
Yeah, certainly. And while, radionics is macrocosmic and external, a good example of something microcosmic for your microcosmic alchemy of self-transformation guided by your will would be, in technology, would be something like brainwave tones, like developed by the Monroe Institute, where one frequency is played in one ear and a slightly different frequency in the other ear. And the difference between them modulates out between the two hemispheres of the brain and creates a low frequency that we couldn't normally hear. It actually entrains the brain and the body, since it's at a sub 40 hertz. Which is within the range we can hear, but is within the range that our body is operating at. And that's another concern in HARP, as your viewers probably know.
Right, you feel the low frequencies, and that's where you hear the extra low frequency or ultra low frequency weaponry and things of that nature. And HARP certainly operates varying frequencies as well. I don't even know the full spectrum of their frequencies, but nonetheless, we can feel frequency, and the lower frequencies we definitely feel like in our gut. I mean, people are aware that you feel the bass booming, of a stereo system or something like that. Or
brainwaves are a good counter technology for something like HARP, to reprogram your biocomputer.
I've wondered about that, and that's a good point. I would really like to see more evolution of that concept, because I think that is true. I think we can train ourselves to repel a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I would be curious if we could exploit that more in the future.
You can already.
Okay.
That's just what I'm saying. Brainwaves or other EEG stimuli, you can program it at the original Schumann Hertz frequency, the 7.835 that we should be resonating at, and then train yourself to resonate at these frequencies, and then you won't be as affected as much by etheric garbage or HARP outputs or something like that nature.
Right.
And I mean, that's relatively available and free technology right there. You can get into radionics through software, free as well. There's a lot of other means of cyber magic. I can't go into all of it.
I know, we've got a minute left, actually, so we're really rapidly
It's
wrapping
been
it up
awesome.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, we have literally a minute left, so if there are any last final parting comments?
Like I was saying, balance is always key in all of this. Stay grounded yourself. Probably don't want to get too much on the left-handed or the right-handed path. They're both, energetically unbalanced in one direction or the other. And balance is key.
Balance, I think, is the key, absolutely. Moderation, balance, mediation, I like those words. Those work for me as well. Well, this has been enlightening for me as well. You definitely have challenged my thinking as well with some of these ideas, and I really appreciate that. So I want to thank everybody out there in the viewing audience. I'd like to thank Ikipr for coming on. I really appreciate it big time. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. And I want to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. I'd like to thank Donna for helping navigate. And please stay tuned for Therefore I Am, 10 p.m., Channel 16, Hollow Earth, Part 3. Dig it, folks. Later.